We are back. What are we watching?
We are watching some horror, we are watching some mystery, and some pop music in there too in the screening room. So let's get at it.
Are either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
He's sorry. You waste our film.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks, hasn't it?
Has been.
Where have we been? But the seats are warm, and we're glad to be back talking movies in the screening room. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from MaddWolf.com. And let's start off. Yeah, we got a couple of good horror movies to talk about this week. So let's start at the top. First up in theaters, plagued by a recurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. Final destination, Bloodlines. Now, I'll be honest, I have not seen, this is the sixth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have not seen all of them. But all you have to really know to realize what kind of effect this entire franchise has had is that anybody can put a picture of driving behind a bunch of logs, a truck with a bunch of logs, and everybody knows, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Everybody knows. And so that's a good sign that this franchise has had an effect over the last, what has it been, 25 years?
25 years. The first one came out in 2000.
That is craziness.
It is crazy.
Craziness.
And it's a very clever idea, that they had with the first one. And so obviously that gets credit for coming up with this notion where, somebody has a premonition and they save themselves and a lot of other people from certain doom. And that just upsets death. Mm-hmm. And death comes for them in the order that they should have died if this person hadn't saved all their lives. That's a clever idea. But what made the franchise really memorable is that death doesn't just come tap on your shoulder and give you cancer, right? I mean, it's these elaborate Rube Goldbergs of death. And that's what I think has been the calling card of this film since the very beginning.
And honestly, as much fun as The Monkey was just a few weeks ago, you can see a bit of that in The Monkey as well, finding all these crazy ways. In fact, I think Oz Perkins has said that he went out of his way to make sure these could not really happen, but just these elaborate type of things that is kind of a nod to some of the things that this franchise has done.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think one of the problems when you get to the sixth episode of a franchise, especially one that has such a very, very specific sort of mythology, is that you wind up it's just carbon copies. Basically, a lot of the sequels, it was just here's a cool way to kill somebody. They just and the other thing that it did is on the whole, you didn't like anybody. You didn't like any of you disliked all the characters. So you were just waiting for their turn. And,
right.
You're like, oh, I can't wait until they get into that tanning bed because, and so that is one of the things. I want to start by saying that I had high hopes for Bloodlines and it exceeded them all. And the first thing that it does is avoid that nihilistic trap of just setting up all of these tropey characters that you hate, right? You don't hate any of these people, including the one who kind of plays the jerk, right? Actually, he was my favorite. He was a cousin, and he's played by Richard Harmon, and he was really funny. He's got all of these tattoos and piercings. Wow, did that come into fun play on more than one occasion. But you really like all the characters. They are family. And so that's one of the things I think it has going for them is that they seem to build this realistic familial bond, because the plot of this story is that 50 years ago, a woman had a premonition and she saved all of these people in this skyrise restaurant from dying. So it has taken death generations to track down all of these people in the order that they should have died. And then once it gets them all, it gets their whole bloodline, because it took such a long time. They had children and grandchildren. So that's the Bloodlines comes into it. So that this group of cousins all realized that they had no idea that it was coming, but here it comes for them. And that's a clever idea as well. The script is great. And I think that has a lot to do, obviously, with the script writers. So Gary Busick, who co-wrote Ready or Not, and the Scream reboots, obviously very clever. And then John Watts, right? Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He's directed all of the charming Tom Holland Spider-Man. He also wrote one of them, and he wrote Clown, which is a great underseen horror movie. And he wrote Cop Car. I mean, he's just a very clever writer. And so, the dialogue is snappier, and then the performances are very solid. It's funny. The editing, I would give a nod to the editing, not necessarily because it's gory and that's all greatly edited, but because it's edited on such a sort of comic timing that you find yourself laughing out loud when you probably shouldn't be, which I thought, I mean, it was just an incredibly entertaining movie. And of course, the big reason to come for it, the gore. Oh, nutty mayhem. It's just glorious, over the top, very clever, the same sort of mousetrap kind of situations, but really, wow, just gleeful with it. So all of the kills I thought were really, really good, fun, viscous. And of course, for us, Tony Todd.
Yeah.
It's his last role. They filmed it just 6 months before he died. And he's been in others of the series. So I don't want to give away any spoilers at all, just to say that the way the film loves Tony Todd and the performance that he gives and the way they work it into the themes of the movie, just heartbreaking, tender. What a beautiful way for him to go out.
Yeah, because let's be honest, he knew that he didn't have long. And for the filmmakers to know that and to treat him and to treat the character and for him to give the performance, it's so bittersweet.
Yes.
But it's a great send off to an icon.
Yeah.
And you'd hate to see him, go out in a crappy movie. And it's so nice that he gets the treatment he gives the performance that he gives, and he gets to do it in such a satisfying film.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And it is. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It is a satisfying film. And one of the things too that I thought, a little bit like Thunderbolts, they they work mental health into this movie, and generational trauma in a way that I think anchors it in an emotional reality that we didn't get in the other films. And that's it. There's just more depth to this one. It's not, it's not Sinners, right? I mean, it's not a masterpiece, but what is? But it's easily the best since the original. And I mean, you have to give the original credit for that concept.
Yeah,
that was smart, and it was smartly executed at the time.
Yeah, because really, what it's doing, it's taking that old concept of time travel, where don't go back and mess with anything, or people will disappear in the future. And you're kind of tinkering with that.
Yeah,
well, this should have happened. It didn't, and now we're coming to make it right. It's a little bit of a twist on that. But yeah, you're right. Maybe it's not Sinners, but I'll tell you what, it's have a nice 1-2 punch here for horror that I think this will do well. I think it will. People will go to see it, the horror fans, because horror, even bad horror, quite often does well. And then the word of mouth, it's already out there about it. I think it's going to do well.
I think you're right. And it's a little bit of a slow weekend, which is going to benefit it. But, and you mentioned Monkey. It's been a great year already for horror.
Yes.
Movies. Monkey was great. Sinners, of course, a masterpiece. And Bloodlines, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, agreed. So that's a good start. And we're not even halfway done with the year. So, we always do a halfway through the year best of horror. I'm thinking in a couple of months, that'll be a good list.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so don't miss out. If you're a horror fan, do not miss out on Final Destination Bloodlines, and that is out in the theaters now.
Next in theaters, an insomniac musician encounters a mysterious stranger, leading to a journey that challenges everything he knows about himself. Hurry up tomorrow.
The Weeknd, and co-writer and director Trey Edward Schultz.
Yes.
Big fan of Trey Edward Schultz. He did. I know it's polarizing, but It Comes at Night. Love that. His first was Krisha. Love that back in the day. And Waves was very good. And now he teams with The Weeknd, whose real name is Abel Tesfaye, who I did not know that before. I know a couple of Weeknd songs that I like. I wouldn't call myself a big fan, but the songs that I've heard of his big hits, I like. And this one really turns out to be more, I think, for the super fans than anything else. But I like it because it's ambitious. They're trying to do something else. It coincides with his album that's coming out the same time. And so it could have easily been, especially after his, I mean, that the thing he just did, the Idol, that was messy. That was messy. It could have easily been just a very safe commercial. Here I am singing some songs and you know, just do it safe that way. But he and Schultz are not interested in that, which I like, even if it's not particularly satisfying for the non-fans. But he's playing himself as a troubled pop superstar on the road during a tour, and the crowds are huge and adoring, but he's very troubled. And early on, the presentation is really reminded me of Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
It's very immersive, very flashing lights. In fact, they put a trigger warning up because there's a lot of flashing lights going on, and immersive music and long panning shots and minimal dialogue, just to get you in this vibe. That's the early kind of aesthetic that they use, and it's interesting. And then as it goes along, his troubles, his troubled mind and reckless, his really, unforgiving schedule is wreaking havoc on his voice. And the doctor says you just need to rest. Well, his manager, played by Barry Keoghan,
The great.
his manager won't hear about it. No, you're invincible, he tells him. Keep going, you're invincible. And it's just grinding him to a halt until he meets this mysterious woman with a dangerous past, played by Jenna Ortega, who's great to see as well. And they have a fun day out at the carnival at the fair, and she lifts his spirits for a little bit as he's away from the tour. But then things start to get a little shady, and the narrative takes a turn toward less about just the vibe and more about maybe going into misery territory, with someone digging into your inspirations, and he has to look back and confront his past, to go forward and keep creating. I think the film thinks that's more profound than it is. Some of these messages, not that they're not worthy. I mean, he's a big star. He's probably felt some of these, and I get that, and I appreciate that. But as a viewer who's not a big super fan, it wasn't particularly compelling, or profound. There's something interesting here, especially visually. And I will say, The Weeknd, Abel, he's in fine voice. His acting limited, especially up against people like Barry Keoghan and Jenna Ortega. That sort of, just calls attention to his
Sure.
limited acting range. But so I think it's a no-brainer, obviously, for the super fans. They're going to go see it, and they're going to go get the album, and that's great. But just for a filmmaking and a storytelling perspective, I think it comes out a little bit wanting, a little bit generic, even in the face of the interesting things it tries to do with its presentation. But again, anytime we talked about it last year, I think we kept saying big swings, big swings.
Yeah.
This isn't a huge big swing, but it's something creative that they're trying to do differently and maybe stretch a little bit. And I respect that. I do. I just think if you don't come in, really geared up because this is your favorite artist, you're probably not going to be that interested in it after it wears its welcome out a little bit going into it. But a decent try for Hurry Up Tomorrow, and that and it also delves into mental health a little bit
Sure.
too,
Sure.
which I appreciate. He's having to sort things out in his life and deal with some trauma in the past, and as is Jenna Ortega and what she represents. So it's an ambitious try, and of course Trey Edward Schultz is a filmmaker that we both like,
Yeah.
and respect. So this is a tandem, and I think they've gotten together maybe one other time. I think before this, Schultz may have directed a video for him or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the other co-writers, name I forget, was one of the people involved in The Idol. So even though that was a little bit ill-fated, maybe a lot depending on who you ask, this is on the big screen, and I would say it's for the big weekend fans only. It's called Hurry Up Tomorrow.
Next up, Magpie lives in an isolated church community ruled over by her father, the pastor. When a man is murdered, paranoia sets in and people start to whisper about a strange beast that lives in the forest. It's the severed son.
Ooh, whispers and paranoia. See, I like that. I like that premise. That calls to mind. We were just talking about It Comes at Night.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about that. I know it's one of the things that people hate about it, but I like that. So I'm intrigued right away with this.
Sure. And folk horror, we both like folk horror a lot.
We do.
And this is writer-director Dean Puckett. And, if you look at it, it's clearly a pretty low-budget affair. It's minimal settings, minimal cast. I don't think anybody changes their clothes. They're all the same costumes, which is a funny way to look at it. But of course, you and I often do. But I don't think the film betrays that budget. It doesn't need more than what it has, what it gives you. Magpie is the sort of in this tiny little community. She's being fingered as a witch. It takes a little while to get there, but you can see it in the eyes of the rest of the people in the congregation. Her father happens to be the pastor, although she's had a falling out with him before the film starts because he married her off to this abusive man. And the movie, I think, is interesting because it doesn't follow the arc you might expect, where it's like sort of in the beginning, things were this way, but then this abusive man came in. It dumps you where a lot of movies would be the halfway part, right? All this stuff happened before that you're not privy to. You just know that this is kind of the way the villagers see Magpie. And it's interesting. Her performance is great. It's really very, rebellious and angry and dismissive in a way that I think is really refreshing and fun for a period piece. It doesn't seem like it's anachronistic. It just seems like films pretend that nobody ever, for example, cursed back in the day, things like that. And so I really liked it. And I think that it's interesting the way, in a little bit like the film The Witch, it's blurring what you expect to see. When you see like a period piece witch movie, you kind of expect it either to be, right, the villagers are evil, the woman is innocent, or like the woman is in league with Satan, the villagers are doomed. And like The Witch, this movie kind of blurs that a little bit. And what it does is just ask you, why do you believe in God in the first place? Ask the audience, like, look at these things that are happening. And I think that that's where the film is the most interesting, because without being super obvious about anything, you follow a different character's arc along and be like, oh, okay. I like, and I thought that there was some subtlety to the storytelling that I appreciated. And there's also a very creepy element to it that I appreciated. So this one is streaming right now, and I recommend it, especially if you're a folk horror fan.
And we should probably point out, if you're looking for it and for things to think about narratively, in the title, The Severed Son is S-U-N.
Yes, right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it's true. And it has to do with a little fable that they're telling at the very beginning and very end of the film. That's what will give you a sense of what that means. But you're right. Yeah. If you're looking for it, it's not the son, S-O-N.
Yeah. So yeah, folk horror. We are down for that. And that one is streaming now, called The Severed Son.
Also in theaters, a fading Midwestern town in which Friendo the Clown, a symbol of bygone success, reemerges as a terrifying scourge. Clown in a cornfield.
This one we're kind of doubling back since we were gone the last couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
This has been in the theaters for at least a week.
Yeah.
And Friendo.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that? I like that. Going back to No Country for Old Men. And I'm actually seeing, since this has come out, and it's always good to have horror be talked about, good or bad. But there's different camps coming up about this because we didn't love this movie. But a lot of people are pointing out, hey, this is geared toward a younger audience. So know that going in. If you're a hardened horror fan, if you're coming for something like we just talked about, Final Destination, something like that, this is geared toward a more young adult horror, for lack of a better term. So yeah, keep that in mind.
It's an adaptation of a very well-received young adult horror novel. And you're right. But I still had kind of high hopes for it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it. We're from Ohio, so there are a lot of cornfields here, and clowns are scary. And I love the idea of seeing the two things together. And there is something really jarring when you're in a cornfield, when the camera is in a cornfield, a clown ought not be there. And there is something really alarming. Like, why is there a clown in the corn? Like, I love that.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of the imagery of it. I thought that I think one of the ways that it appeals to a younger audience is that there's a group of sort of misfit high school kids, outsiders, always in trouble. And the reason that they're always in trouble is because they're trying to get their YouTube channel to take off. So they're always filming things and they're setting up these little pranks that for them, they kind of sew together into like an origin story slasher about Friendo, the clown on the syrup that has made the community what it is. And so that's why the police don't like them and the principal doesn't like these kids. And there's a new girl in town. And of course, she immediately falls in with this crowd of people. And that's fine. And that's a pretty standard kind of idea for adolescent literature and horror films as well. Updated a little bit with the social media aspect of it. But I think and then every single thing, and you and I were talking about as we were watching it, like all the shots, all the scenes, they're all borrowed from better movies.
Yeah.
Old movies, sure, that maybe a 15-year-old hasn't seen.
Right.
But I don't think it's unfair to kind of hold that against the film. We are big fans of the filmmaker, Eli Craig, who made Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is one of the greatest horror comedies ever made.
Yep.
And so when we started this movie and saw some of those sort of borrowed images, we were like, I can't wait for this. Like, it set us up for something fun. We were expecting that to go someplace sort of narratively, as opposed to, and it doesn't. It really seems to be like borrowing things under the assumption that the audience doesn't know they're borrowed.
That's right. That's right. And that quickly got old. And I realized, coming from a different audience, that we are, a different part of the audience that has seen all those movies, but still, I think there's a way to do it where you can homage it and not just seem like I'm taking this because I don't think these people have seen it yet.
Yeah.
And that's how it came out. And everything just seems so stale and regurgitated. And I really wanted to like it too.
Yeah.
And I totally get that a younger person is gonna like it more. And if it gets that younger person to look into those other films and like, well, then great. If you're using it as,
I think that there are, so I have two other issues with it that, regardless of your age, are still issues with the movie. And for me, the biggest one, and one is that it can't decide if it's a horror comedy or not. Right. There are certain scenes that are set up for a punchline where you're being chased by, I don't want to give anything away, but you're being chased. You're in desperate peril. And then they stop to deliver a fairly lengthy, not even like a quick quip, a fairly lengthy punchline. And I thought, okay, well, you would be dead by now. Like, you've taken me out of the excitement and tension of the scene.
Right.
And so that is a problem. That's just a filmmaking problem. That doesn't have anything to do with sort of how seasoned an audience is. But the other thing is that the end of the film ignores some pretty big plot lines that the movie brings up. They just don't resolve them. Now, if you're just going to end the film right there, you can go, ooh, well, maybe that's to come. But they don't end the film right there, of course. They revisit a year later. And clearly somebody is going to go, hey, what happened to these character? You know what I mean? I know you do know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, because to be totally honest, we saw this film early and we saw it at home, and the point you're talking about hit us so hard. We said, okay, look, we have to stop and rewind this. Yeah. Because did we miss something?
Yeah,
we can't be upset about this point if it's on us. We got to go back and make sure what we're talking about, and it was correct. So just this big thread is left hanging, and was something edited out that they just took a meat cleaver, which happens sometimes.
I know. And what's funny about it is that it's not even like it's not it's the biggest plot line in the film doesn't get resoled at all.
It was curious.
Yes.
It was curious for sure.
Yeah, it was weak. It was just a weak effort. I had high hopes for it.
I did too.
And
I really did too. And it kind of reminded me with the YA type angle how much I enjoyed that movie Dark Harvest from a couple of years
oh,
ago
yeah,
with the
absolutely.
cornfield and that monster.
Mhm.
And that it wasn't great, but it was pretty solid.
Right,
A
that's
pretty
also
solid.
YA horror
Yeah,
fiction that
yeah.
was cinematic, so it
Hmm.
seemed to kinda leap off the page. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
Much
I
better
agree, but
than this.
I'm with you. Yeah, I was excited for this, especially like you said, with the director and how much we love Tucker and Dale. So yeah, I'm disappointed, but maybe the YA audience is going to go in and get more fun out of it than we did. But Clown in the Cornfield, Clown in a Cornfield, not a corn maze.
No, our friend says,
Some of our
"That's another
friends
movie you
said
can see,
Clown
though."
in a corn maze. I'm like, all right, I'm ready for that movie too. Uh, Clown in a Cornfield in theaters now.
And one more this week, a rebel seeking abandoned dogs on a remote island finds herself in a harrowing situation filled with terror and adrenaline-fueled chaos. A breed apart.
More horror. It's a good thing.
It is.
Yeah, well, in this case,
Usually.
it's yeah. This is an interesting movie. It's a horror comedy that is it's one of the it's almost like a shark exploitation movie with dogs
Right.
because the filmmakers, the First brothers, the sons of Stephen First, Flounder from Animal House, they've been involved in films in a variety of different capacities for years now. And when they're getting into filmmaking, they've just come off a run of shark exploitation TV movies, Ghost Shark, and just there's a bunch of them. So now that they're in a big screen movie and a streaming movie, they've taken a lot of those same concepts and just turned them to dogs. And they cite their inspiration as the 2006 horror movie, The Breed,
Yeah. With
about
Michelle
dogs.
Rodriguez, I saw that,
Yeah,
of course.
yes, on a deserted type island.
Yeah.
And that is the premise here, where this obnoxious YouTuber, I guess based around somebody called Mr. Beast, I don't really know who that is, but a YouTuber brings all this group of five influencers, five teams of influencers, invites them all to his private island and have a contest. This private island is overrun with abandoned dogs, and so we're going to do some good by rescuing dogs while we're here. And the team that rescues the most dogs gets to keep the entire island for themselves. They will own it. Okay. And of course, this will all be streamed on everybody's outlets. So they're all looking for views and clicks and everything like that. But then what we found out in the prologue, 13 years before on this island, a movie was being made with an action star played by Hayden Panettiere, who's in a cameo here, pretty much a cameo here. And they had to shut down production because all these dogs on this island were not friendly at all. And the dog trainers that were going to be used on this production just disappeared. And that sort of just was conveniently forgotten in the years since. And now they're going to do something nice for these dogs on this island. So that is the setup. And right now I totally get it. I totally get the angle about the influencers because they're everywhere, but it's such low-hanging fruit,
Right.
especially when they're such cliched characters. Now the ensemble, you've got some recognizable, some talented people. Paige Kennedy, who we've seen in the Meg movies, and then the two main stars of the movie Fall, Virginia Gardner, and then I'm forgetting the other.
Grace
The,
Carolyn Curry?
yes, and she especially is good. She's really too good for this movie, I'll be honest with you. So you've got some talent here in the ensemble, but the characters can be such, cutter cliches. But the effects, man, the effects are so ridiculous. It's a mix of I guess AI and CGI and maybe some stuffed animals thrown in there and some real dogs. And then when it does get totally bonkers in the last 10 minutes when Hayden Panettiere shows back up, then a shark does get involved, and that looks even more ridiculous. But the funny thing is, those last 10 minutes, that should have been the vibe of the entire movie. The
Right.
rest of it seems like they're even as ridiculous as it is, it's taking itself too seriously, and it's not funny enough. I mean, if they'd have just gone balls to the walls bonkers from the beginning, it could have been fun, but it's just so ridiculous, and it takes a while to get to the point where for sure they know that, and we're just gonna just go with it and make it one of these shark to puss or whatever it is with dogs. And so I wanted to like it more than I did because I understood what the vibe was. I understood I think what they were going for, but I just don't go far enough. to get there, even though those last 10 minutes are a lot of fun. And even it's one of those movies that starts the blooper reel right away. I mean, there's barely 10 seconds before they start the blooper reel. But even those, the bloopers seem staged to me. They don't seem like real bloopers. And then at the very, very end, you get some backstage stuff. But even the bloopers didn't really seem authentic and seem as funny as they could have been if they were real bloopers. So I was disappointed in this. But you know, if you like that sort of shark exploitation and just put some dogs in there with a side of a little shark, you know, you could have it on in the background, especially for the last 10 minutes. And, you know, they ape some other well-known movies as well. In fact, they have a line in the script making kind of wink, wink at the movie Fall. You'll see a very famous line or a very famous shot from Jaws. You can probably guess the one. You'll see the big shot from Annihilation. I'm sure you can guess the one, and some others. So you got some winks about it. I appreciate that too, but man, I was looking forward to just get even more bonkers throughout the entire movie. So kind of disappointed in that, and that is called A Breed Apart, and that one is streaming now, correct? Streaming.
It is.
Yeah, so
it's been a couple of weeks. Why don't we check in with Schlocketeer?
the Schlocketeer.
He's here.
Hey.
There he is.
Hi.
Thanks for joining in.
Good. Yeah, how are you?
Good.
We're good. We're rested, back at it, and I'm sure you've had a couple of weeks to collect a bunch of tidbits from the studio world.
Oh yeah. First up, in their infinite wisdom, Warner Brothers has decided to change the name of their streaming app once again. So instead of being known simply as Max, it will now be called HBO Max. Again.
Okay. Yeah. I think honestly, I've called it that the whole time.
I'm pretty sure I have every time I've announced something on here for them.
Yeah. So maybe you can blame us. We just wouldn't give it up. So they're going to go back.
It's all our fault. Moving on, if you aren't subscribed to Apple TV Plus and you've been waiting to see last year's George Clooney and Brad Pitt crime film Wolves, it will finally be available on VOD for everyone on May 20th.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun enough. Yeah.
Charming.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Donnie Yen's action crime thriller The Prosecutor will be arriving on VOD on May 27th. And Lorcan Finnegan's new Nick Cage movie, The Surfer, which is still playing in some theaters, will hit VOD on June 6th.
Yeah, enjoyed that. I enjoyed that one too.
Yeah.
And then moving on, Amazon Prime will premiere the action comedy Heads of State on July 2nd, and that one stars John Cena, Idris Elba, Priyanka Chopra, and Jack Quaid, who is in everything this year.
You're not a kidding.
Yeah.
Magnolia Pictures has set a July 2nd theatrical release for their post-apocalyptic horror movie 40 Acres, which stars Danielle Deadwyler.
Ooh.
Hey, come on.
Right. And then Universal will release Timo Tjahjanto's Nobody 2 in theaters on August 15th. Bob Odenkirk, Connie Nielsen, RZA, and Christopher Lloyd are all back, and this time they're adding Sharon Stone, John Ortiz, and Colin Hanks as the villains. The trailer for that one's pretty fun.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised it's taken them this long to do a sequel.
Yeah.
I think between COVID, the strikes, and then I think Odenkirk had a health scare as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that kind of slowed him down on that one a bit, but the trailer looks really fun.
Understandable. Okay.
And then Ethan Cohen's new neo-noir comedy Honey Don't will arrive in theaters on August 22nd. That stars Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day.
Cool.
It's the second installment in his B-movie trilogy.
Right.
And then, also on August 22nd, Lionsgate is releasing the crime thriller Americana, which stars Sydney Sweeney, Halsey, and Paul Walter Hauser. Interesting combination there.
Yes.
Back to streaming for a bit. Apple TV Plus has set a September 5th premiere for Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest, which sees him reuniting with Denzel Washington. And that is actually a remake of Akira Kurosawa's High and Low.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
so
all right.
Big guns on that one for Apple TV Plus.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And then to close things out, Lionsgate is releasing Francis Lawrence's The Long Walk on September 12th, which is an adaptation of the Stephen King book by the same name. That's sort of with Francis Lawrence back in Hunger Games mode, but far bleaker given the material. And it's a dystopian thriller that stars Cooper Hoffman, Charlie Plummer, Judy Greer, and Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for that. It looks harrowing.
If it's anything like the book, it will be a nice feel-bad movie for September.
And is that in theaters? Where's that?
Yeah, that'll be in theaters on September 12th.
I look forward to
that's all
that.
I've got you.
Okay, you can always catch the latest news from Daniel at the Schlocketeer on the socials. We appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here as always.
Good
And
to
we're
see
looking ahead to next week, Memorial Day weekend. How did that happen?
Oh my God.
I know.
Good stuff coming.
Good stuff. So the big one coming next weekend is the latest, and I guess the last, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is out next week.
And also, of course, Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, can we be more excited about a movie? Pee Wee Herman as himself. This is a two-parter, much like the great documentary last year on Steve Martin. It's a two-parter. Cannot wait.
No, can't wait. Can't wait. Most people die on Sunday.
Okay. Also one called A Surrender.
Fear Street Prom Queen. We're excited about that one too.
Yeah, love those Fear Streets.
That last trilogy,
and then one more, which is getting Friendship, got a little bit of a wider release this week, but it's getting the wide rollout next week. And I'm hearing great things about that. Looking forward to Friendship. That comes out next week as well. And then we are in officially to the summer movie season. So we'll talk about that next week. But what do you think this week? Lots of horror to chew on, and we like that. So if you want to keep the conversation going, you can find us easily on the socials at MaddWolf Columbus, and keep watching the movies. And appreciate it that you kept the seat warm for us back here in the screening room. Hopefully you weren't as mad that we were gone as our cat was. That got ugly. That got ugly. So be well. We'll talk movies. Hope to hear from you. Until next week, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.